So some more James Harden trade rumors have just come out. There was a report that said that James Harden has added the Boston Celtics and the Portland Trail Blazers to his list of teams that he would prefer to be traded to. Now, first off with the Celtics, I can understand why Harden would want to be traded there. The Celtics are one of the more storied franchises in NBA history. They're in the Eastern Conference, which is a lot more open, and he'd get the chance to play with a guy like Jason Tatum because at this point, Tatum is untouchable. They're not going to include him in a Harden trade, and he'd probably get to play with a guy like Kemba Walker too, so that could be a very deadly team in the East. But from the Celtics' perspective, I don't really know if they would want to go through with a trade for James Harden just because they would likely have to include a guy like Jaylen Brown in that package to get James Harden because this Celtics team doesn't have very much depth. They have picks, of course, but in terms of actual players, they don't really have too many young guys that have star potential per se, right? They have a few guys that are interesting, but Jaylen Brown would have to be the centerpiece of a James Harden trade, and I don't know if the Celtics would want to go through with that just because Brown and Tatum have showed potential as a duo, and they've reached 2 Eastern Conference Finals together. So if I'm the Celtics, I'm just holding on to Jaylen Brown because he's on the same timeline as your franchise player in Jason Tatum. And plus, he's also locked up for 4 to 5 years. You could trade Jaylen Brown and picks and other pieces for James Harden, and he could very well leave after 2 years, and then you just kind of gave up all those assets, all that depth, all those picks for 2 years of James Harden. Is that really worth it? I don't really know. Plus, I just think the window for contention is just longer by keeping Jaylen Brown. Like I said, these guys have been successful together. They've made 2 Eastern Conference Finals, and they're still so young. They're going to continue to get better. And it's just crazy to me how the narrative can switch and just be so different depending on the franchise, right? Because the Celtics, they're such a storied franchise. They've won so many championships that it's not necessarily I guess there's no moral victories per se, right? Yeah, they're an up-and-coming team. They've been a good playoff team. They made a few conference finals, but they haven't been to the finals since, 2009 or 10, when they had KG and Paul Pierce and Ray Allen and all those guys. They haven't been back to the finals in, at least a decade now, right? And that's kind of viewed as a disappointment in Boston because they've been so successful. But say a smaller market team had this same young core, they would be talked about as one of the best young cores. Everyone would be saying, oh, you should keep this core intact. But because it's in Boston and they have this culture of winning, there's a mentality amongst a lot of people that they should make the win now trades and they don't have time to let young guys develop. But honestly, sometimes that's just the way to go, and I think that's the smart decision, and I think Boston should just hold on to the guys they have. If I'm Portland though, I'm definitely looking to try to make a push for Harden and trying to offer a package to Houston to get James Harden on this team because Dame Lillard, he's in the prime of his career and he wants to win now. It's not the same situation as Boston where you have a young franchise player who's already showing superstar potential at such a young age, but he's still got so much room to grow. And on top of that, you've got another young star alongside him who's also going to continue to grow with him, right? It's not that type of situation. You've got your 2 best players are 2 veteran players, Dame and CJ, who are already established in the league. They kind of are what they are right now. They're in the prime of their careers. And there's a lot of people who are skeptical of whether or not this duo of Dame and CJ can contend and compete for a championship together. Yeah, sure, they've achieved a lot of success in the regular season, but other than that one run in, the 2019 season, the 2019 playoffs, where they went to the Western Conference Finals, this team hasn't been all that successful in the playoffs. And part of the reason why is because you've got Dame, who's a top 10 player, and I mean, you can talk about the fit all you want, but the reality is that you need talent on your team to win championships. And as good as CJ is, he's probably a top 40 player in the league or so, just off the top of my head. If you bring in James Harden, that's another top 10 player, a guy who's even better than Dame. But the point is, by bringing in James Harden, now you have two top 10 level players on your team that I think could fit well together. I mean, we saw James Harden and Westbrook get the 4th seed in the West, and their team was just kind of crazy if you think about it. They didn't even have like a center. They were getting out-rebounded by 20 or 30 on some nights, but they were still able to manage to get wins, right? And finish 4th in the West. And that was a very deep West. It's going to be deep again this year. So you never know, but I feel like by getting Harden, you're just giving yourself a better chance to win because you've got more talent on your team. And when you have a guy like Dame who's been so loyal to you and stayed with you all these years, I feel like you owe it to him to try to give him the best opportunity to win. And I think by acquiring Harden, that gives Dame and this Portland team a better chance to win a championship than if they just held on to CJ and whatever other pieces they'd have to give up in a James Harden trade. So in order to get Harden, I proposed this trade. They definitely have to be giving up CJ just to make the salaries work. On top of that, they probably have to give up a few of their young guys. I threw in Zach Collins, Nasir Little, and Gary Trent, but I could maybe see Houston wanting Anthony Simons. He's a good young player too. On top of that, Portland would also have to give up some future picks as well, some first rounders, second rounders, whatever would be able to make the deal get done. And then Portland, they'd get James Harden, of course, and I threw in Ben McLemore too, just because, I feel like by getting rid of Ben McLemore, that would give more opportunity for wings like Gary Trent and Nasir Little to get some more minutes on the team, right? And then Portland, they get a nice shooter off the bench because they are giving up a good amount of depth by getting rid of their young guys. So Ben McLemore would be a solid, cheap, affordable shooter off the bench for them. I think that there's actually a good chance that a trade like this could happen. I know that everyone has been saying that, Houston should just hold out and wait for Philadelphia to give up on Ben Simmons and trade him for Harden, but I don't know how long Houston is going to have to wait to get Ben Simmons, because I think that offer could still be open, but their hand could get forced if James Harden continues to act the way that he's been acting. If he keeps getting into confrontations with his teammates, if he keeps going out and causing all these distractions by going to these huge gatherings, being filmed, giving a bad reputation for the league and for the Houston Rockets organization, they might just try to get him out of there and just get off that situation, get out of that situation, because it's just a mess over there right now, and they don't necessarily have the time to just sit there and let this whole situation play out as it's playing out, because they're literally having games canceled because of James Harden's behavior, and it's just ridiculous right now. So I could see them maybe just saying, okay, Portland, you want James Harden? This is a decent enough trade package. We're just going to accept what you give us and move on from there. I could definitely see that. If you're Houston, I mean, a trade package of McCollum, Collins, Little, Gary Trent, and some picks is solid. You get some solid young guys who have some upside. You'd be getting some picks as well. CJ's a fringe all-star level player, so you could be competitive with CJ, John Wall, Cousins, Christian Wood, the guys you're getting in this trade. Daniel House, you still have him, PJ Tucker. They could be solid, but at best they're like a 7th, 8th seed, and they don't have too many great assets going forward. I don't know. That's not the best situation for Houston. If you're Portland, it's nice, but Houston, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, because I don't know where James Harden's going to go. I mean, it might end up being a team like Portland, a team that we weren't expecting. Who knows, maybe there's going to be more teams that he's willing to go to in the next coming days. Maybe we're going to see more news on this, but this could be a very real possibility. And if you're a Portland fan, I feel like you should be excited, because Dame and James Harden, that would be a lethal backcourt, and other teams in the West would definitely have to watch out for them.